Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, alongside a dear, dear friend, Tammy Thompson, and we are so excited to bring this podcast to you. Show Me the Way podcast is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. Episode 21 brings us a very inspiring story where Melanie Uzarek, a friend and former coworker, opens up about her extraordinary journey through some of life's toughest challenges. From discovering she had renal failure and needing a kidney donation, to navigating a divorce, job loss, and even facing health struggles with her sweet dog Maisie, Melanie's story is one of strength, perseverance, and hope. She shares the lessons she's learned along the way, embracing each day as a gift and trusting in God's plan for her life. Melanie's unwavering spirit and belief that she has more to give to the world will leave you feeling inspired and hopeful. As we step into 2025, it's clear this is meant to be Melanie's year. Here's to her finding a kidney donor and continuing on a path to health and happiness. This is a story of resilience and faith that you will want to hear. Back again with the Show Me the Way podcast. This week we are happy to welcome Melanie Uzarek. Melanie and I also worked together quite a while ago at my first company outside of college, Campbell and Company. Now, though we didn't work necessarily always together, I think at that time we were all a pretty tight-knit group, so we got to know each other and we remained friends on Facebook. And after seeing a post about the podcast, she reached out and said she would love to be a guest, and we were super excited about that. So happy to have you here today, Melanie. Usually we're joined by my friend and partner, Tammy, but she's got a lot going on. So it's just you and me today, but I think we will wing it and we'll be just fine. Looking so forward to chatting with you. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thank you.
Melanie, before we jump in, just tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
I am Melanie, as you said. I am 48 years old. I'm a single woman. I'm living with end stage renal failure, waiting for a kidney transplant. And so the last couple years have been they've been a little challenging, but I have tried to figure out a way to make it through life and be appreciative of the things I have. And I don't take life for granted. I appreciate every morning I wake up and I breathe life in. And so I just wanted to, share a little bit about my story and the things that have happened to me over the last few years.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that so much. I think everything that you said is the main reason we're trying to do this podcast. As you know, we started it because I wanted to share my son's story, my son who has muscular dystrophy. And I just thought sharing my perspective, my story is important to get out there. And then a couple of weeks ago, we had my husband on. So it's the same thing, like what he's learned and the perspective he's gained. And so having someone like you on who has been through a lot in your own life, I love the fact that you're willing to share and be open so that people may learn from you if they go through something similar or if they go through their own changes and pivots and just hopefully learn through some of the things that you were able to take from everything you've been through. So perfect reason. I do think I'm not sure how spiritual you are, but I often think that people come into our lives because God says you need to reach out to them, you need to be connected to them. And I put that post out there, and yes, you and I haven't chatted in person in quite some time, but you saw that, and somehow the Facebook algorithm got it to you, and you made a comment. So I think there was definitely a reason and almost a God wink that
Mhm.
you saw that and that you decided to be a guest on the show. And I think it takes a lot of courage to say, "Count me in. Yes, I will speak in public. You can put me out on this podcast." So good for you, and thank you so much for being open and willing to share what's been going on. I think of all this, everybody has a story, and you probably have several stories. I could go on and on about all kinds of things, but we're kind of selecting maybe just one direction, and you kind of already alluded to what you would like to focus on. And I think we'll probably just let you jump right in. And it's really the a time in your life that you thought your path was going one way, and all of a sudden you realized it was a change. It was not going to go that way. I think when we're young, we just expect the straight line. And as we age, we think, wow, it is nowhere near straight. Sometimes it's backwards, sometimes it's to the
That is
left,
so true.
sometimes it's to the right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not that I always want to have people that are close to my age on the show, but I just think we're the ones that at this point we've been through so much that we can pick and choose from a variety of stories and help our listeners learn.
Yeah.
Thanks again for being on. And I'm going to stop talking and let you share a story. So, like I said, kind of what you've already brought up, but a time that you thought you were going one way and you needed to pivot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was right after COVID in 2021. And I didn't really realize that I was in end stage renal failure. I had noticed a little bit of weight gain, and I thought, well, we just came off COVID. Nobody is out working out, and we're at home and we're quarantining and we're eating
Mhm.
things we shouldn't be eating. But I noticed a slight weight gain, and I wasn't having the normal symptoms that people have when they're experiencing kidney failure. My husband at the time and I decided to take a trip with some friends to Las Vegas. And on that flight, I lost consciousness. And it became an emergency situation. They were going to ground the plane, but there was a paramedic and two nurses on board, thank God, that agreed to sort of watch over me. We only had an hour left in the flight. And thank God for them, because it was a really scary situation. I'd never had a medical emergency like that before. I've never had a medical emergency at all before that. And so when we landed in Las Vegas, the EMS techs were basically waiting for me to take me to the hospital. And I spent the entire trip in the hospital, and they were trying to figure out what was going on with me. They first thought that there was something wrong with my heart, and that I could potentially have been in congestive heart failure, which at the time was true. But I didn't know that all of that was caused by the kidney failure. So they weren't going to let me fly home. I was potentially going to have to take a train home. My dad was willing to fly out to help us out and take the train back. But they finally cleared me, and I was able to take a flight back home. And once I got home, I followed up with my PCP, who basically kept telling me, well, your blood pressure is really high. Um, and again, didn't know my blood pressure was so high because I was in kidney failure. She eventually sent me to a cardiologist after she got all the reports back from Las Vegas. And he said to me, when I saw him, that he definitely believed that there were things wrong with my heart, but he didn't believe the heart was the root cause of it. My creatinine levels were pretty elevated. And he said to me, I have a friend who's a nephrologist, and I'd like you to see her. I'm thinking I'm going to check out. He's going to schedule a follow-up appointment with her for me. But he literally pulled out his cell phone and called her. And she immediately said, I want to see her this afternoon. And so I went to see her. She had read some preliminary reports and said that there seemed to be some things wrong that pointed to some kidney issues to her. She scheduled a biopsy for me. I had the biopsy, and then a couple weeks later, I went into her office for my follow-up appointment and my results. And she seemed to be really distraught. She said, I've looked at a lot of different things. I've tried to go through this in my head. She said, there's no way to really sugarcoat this, but you are in end stage renal failure. I was already at stage 5, and you're going to need a kidney transplant.
And there was no other sign or anything other than a little weight gain and then what happened on the plane.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This was on a Wednesday. She said, I've scheduled an appointment with you with a surgeon on Monday. You're going to be starting something called peritoneal dialysis. We're going to put a catheter into your abdomen. Normally, the recovery time is 6 weeks. but on that Wednesday, you're going to start training on how to administer peritoneal dialysis at home. I was in shock. I honestly, I almost tear up now because um, I never in a million years imagined that that was what was going on and that it was already too late for me to try to preserve and to save my kidneys.
Was there a way that anyone could have predicted this ahead of time? No? I mean, it doesn't sound like it.
The things that I had wrong with me are indicators of kidney disease, but they're also just things that can happen all on their own. For instance,
Right.
like the high blood pressure.
Right.
Um,
So many people can just have that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But I didn't know that my blood pressure was so high because my kidneys weren't functioning.
Right. Is there anything like this in your family?
I do have an aunt who had a transplant um, when I was 20 years old, and her transplant lasted about
Uh-oh.
18 years. And then she was going through just a routine checkup, and there was cancer in her transplanted kidney. So she had to have that transplanted kidney removed. Subsequently, one of my older cousins was her donor, and my aunt's doctors suggested that my cousin just check in with her doctors, just to make sure that there wasn't anything going on there. And she discovered that she had cancer in her remaining kidneys. So there are definitely some other issues in my family. I have a cousin with type 2 diabetes that's pretty severe, and he's entering renal failure as well. My aunt's was caused by lupus. So I'm not the first for this to be a challenge and a journey in my family. I had the surgery. I had a catheter put into my abdomen. I learned how to administer peritoneal dialysis. So, if anyone's not familiar with that, basically it is a different form of dialysis than what people are sort of accustomed to. You pump dextrose through a machine into your body. It dwells and then it releases the fluid and takes the fluid buildup and the toxins that are building up in your body out. For me, I did that over an 8-hour cycle while I slept at night, over 4 cycles. Um, I once I started that, I started going through a medical workup to be approved for transplant, to be on the transplant list. And through that workup, we discovered that I indeed had issues with the arteries surrounding my heart. At that point, when I was diagnosed, my kidneys were only functioning at 11%. So there were a lot of toxins. People tell you to watch your cholesterol, to be heart smart, but there are other things in your body that contribute to calcification of the arteries. And for me, it was high levels of phosphorus. I had artery damage surrounding my heart, and I ended up having to have open heart surgery to have those arteries replaced. They took them from other parts of my body. So essentially, it was a quadruple bypass that I ended up having to have. And so I had the surgery. And 4 days after that surgery, I was in the ICU. And my partner, my husband of 19 years, decided that he no longer wanted to be married. Yeah. Um, and I still get choked up about that.
I'm sure. I can't imagine. You're going through the most difficult thing you've ever gone through, and
Yeah.
then let's just pile on.
Yeah. It was a really, really difficult time for me. I mean, physically, and emotionally. I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
I had no indicators. It's like all these things happening to me and you have no, like, indicators.
No warning.
The
Mhm.
heart surgery, the divorce, like, none of that was, like, I ever thought would be in my cards. While I was going through cardiac rehab, he filed for divorce, and so for me, that was such a dark time, you know? And I didn't think that, like, I was gonna be able to make it through that, with the physical things that were going on, the mental things that were going on, and then you throw a divorce into the mix, and it wasn't an easy thing to go through, but somehow now, I look back and I never realized that, like, how strong I was. I thought, "There's no way," like, even the physical pain after the surgery, I thought, "There's no way that I'm gonna be able to get through all of this." physical pain. It was probably the worst pain that I've ever had to go through. If anyone is familiar with open heart surgery, to get to your heart, they have to break through your sternum. And so the pain of that and having to put me back together like a puzzle and like wire me shut, that was a lot of pain to go through physically. Then you top the mental pain off. And I just thought, this is such a dark time. Like, I think to myself that that really was such a dark time. But luckily for me, I had really, really good friends and really, really good family,
That was my
including
next
my
question.
including my in-laws, who I still have a really, really close and great relationship with to this day, even after divorce. But I made it through. I made it through. Living on dialysis brought a lot of changes to my life. Being dependent on a machine, the machine had to come with me everywhere. If I spent the night at my parents' house, the machine and all of my supplies had to come with me. Traveling right before my heart surgery, I went with my in laws on a family trip to Disney. That had to come with me on the airplane. And it's a pretty heavy machine. I wasn't even allowed to carry it myself because I was limited in the poundage that I could lift because of the catheter in my stomach. But I acclimated. I thought to myself, I'm so lucky to be alive, because there were so many times since this journey started, between the airplane, the heart issues. Like, there are so many times that God could have said, it's time. It's time for you to leave this earth. And for some reason, he said, this world needs more Melanie still. And, he guided me through that. I like to say, and I like to believe that I was specifically chosen for this journey for a reason, instead of thinking, why me? And I think that's really helped me navigate and just be so appreciative for the science that helps to keep me alive. I eventually, after my heart surgery, was cleared to go active on the transplant list. And then this past summer, I had another hiccup. I had some issues last January. I had a fall and developed a blood clot, and they put me on a blood thinner. And once the blood clot was cleared and I was given clearance that it was just from the fall, I didn't have any clotting issues, they still wanted me to take the blood thinner. They switched me over to a different blood thinner that has a very rare side effect, that you develop something called, especially in renal patients, called calciphylaxis, which is calcification underneath the skin. And when that calcification happens, the skin dies, you develop ulcers and sores. Lots of patients develop sepsis and infection, and they basically pass away from it. Calciphylaxis has about a 20% survival rate. And I just thought, the way my luck is going, there's no way I could ever be in that 20%. And I was. I only developed lumps. I never developed any lesions or open wounds or infections. Typically, when that happens, they give you a 6-month to 12-month life expectancy once that happens. I never developed any of that. But in order to get treatment, there's no known cure, but there is treatment that you can get, infusions. But in order to get those infusions, I had to come off peritoneal dialysis and start the traditional dialysis called hemodialysis, where I go to a clinic 3 days a week. And at the tail end of my dialysis, I get the infusions to treat the calciphylaxis.
So that's what you're doing now.
That is what I am doing now. And it's working, and I'm putting it
Okay.
in remission. And I'm so thankful and grateful to say that I'm part of that 20%
Mhm.
that beat it and put it into remission. And I'm so thankful for that.
So that being said, are you off of that medication that caused that?
I am. They immediately took me off and
Okay.
switched me back
To the previous
to the one that I had been taking prior to.
prior.
The reason they had switched me over, because if I had been called for transplant, it's easier to wean you off of the one that they had switched me to, and transplant prefers that. But like I said, the rare side effect that happens from it is something that happened to me.
And at the time when they said probably all that you just told us, you're thinking it's worth the risk because I really want to be on this transplant plant list. That's going to save my life ultimately. And
Right.
then that happens. I mean, it's just again, not that our stories are the same, but when it comes to Nathan, he's been on a steroid since he was 5, and there's so many side effects, and you
Right.
do have to weigh the benefits, the pros and the cons. So you make the best decision at the time.
Yeah, the infusions that I get, it's sodium thiophosphate, and it's what they use to treat patients who have cyanide poisoning. And it's been about 6 months now. I mean, you think like some days I think the poison that I'm putting in my body, what are going to be the long term effects to that? But it's also helping to preserve my life. So you can't think like that. I did pretty well, and now that I'm 6 months into it, I do sometimes occasionally have a side effect, nausea, that sort of thing. Like I can taste it in my mouth. But the negative to that would be not taking it, and I develop wounds and infection, and ultimately death. I'm grateful and thankful, and it's helping me now, and so I can't think like that.
Mhm, exactly.
There's a lot of
Wow.
things that, I don't like to think about. Every day is a new day, but every day is a day that potentially may not come because of my renal failure. I'm doing remarkably well, and my doctors and my friends and my family, especially my doctors say, if we weren't your doctors, we wouldn't know that you would needed a kidney transplant. When my friends like see me that haven't seen me in a little bit, they're like, "You look so good."
Right, I know. I was like, "Gosh, I haven't seen her in forever. She hasn't aged. She looks great." And
Yeah,
it's like,
I mean,
wow, all that you've been through.
I don't know if it has a lot to do with like the mental side of it, where I'm not trying to think negatively about everything going on. Like I said, I like to think like how awesome that God chose me for this journey.
Wow,
And I
Melanie.
should be so thankful that he chose me to be on this journey. And there are things that I'm going to learn, and I'm going to grow. And I have definitely spiritually, I have. Because when you're challenged with something like this, you have to be you have to be right with God, because like I said, tomorrow may not come. And so you just have to be in the right frame of mind. And I firmly believe that your mental well-being affects your physical well-being. And so want the negativity to take I don't want it to take over. I'm on year 3 now of waiting for a transplant. And I've had family members tested that unfortunately were not a match.
Mhm.
Um, I do have somebody that agreed to do what they call paired donation, which means that even though they were not a match for me, they'd be willing to give to a stranger. And I, in turn, would get a matched kidney from a stranger. Now, I was on hold for the blood clot and the calciphylaxis, and I'm back active now. But again, that's a search for trying to find somebody that's a match for me.
And when
Um,
it comes to a match, when it comes to the kidney, what is that? I mean, there's probably so many factors, right?
There's about 5 different factors. First, they look at blood type, but if you aren't the same blood type, they still look at the other markers, the other genetic markers, to see if, what percentage of a match you would be. Unfortunately for me, I have the most common blood type of people waiting for kidney transplant. I'm O positive. So that's a very common blood type for those waiting for kidney transplant. And in Michigan, the wait is fairly long. I said I've been waiting 3 years. The wait in Michigan is 5 to 7 years. I recently was okay to be listed in Toledo, Ohio, which has a much less wait. Michigan is one of the harder states for transplant. That's why the wait is so long. And I'm going through U of M, and they want to make sure that the matches are successful. So they have a higher criteria that they look at.
Well, and again, you want to be very confident when it does happen, so I understand that,
Yeah.
but then on the other hand, makes it more difficult.
Yeah. And the wait in Toledo for a deceased donor kidney, on average, they say is about 4 months.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I've already waited 3 years in Michigan. So I keep saying 2025. I feel like it's gonna be my year. Like, I wanna be positive, I wanna manifest that, I wanna put that out there. Um, you know, I had my annual workup at U of M, and the lead transplant nephrologist said to me, "You're so healthy, even though you need this transplant, and I would love for you to have a living donor because you're so healthy and you've worked so hard to build your health back up." But it's a big thing to ask of somebody, and a lot of people don't realize you really only need one kidney, and gosh, we're given two. So, unfortunately, mine don't work. Neither one work. And I have an 11% kidney function. But I also think like those families that have deceased family members and they are willing to, or even those individuals that are alive that want their organs to go to somebody once they're deceased, thank God for them as well. It's sometimes hard to think about somebody having to go through death in order for me to live, essentially, to get a transplant. But thank God for them, and thank God for their families who agree to do this,
Well, and this is kind of a reminder to those that might be interested. Make sure that you do check that mark, put that as something that you're willing to do once you pass. I mean, you're right. You can look at it a little morbidly, like it's sad that somebody would have to pass. But on the other hand, in their passing, like you're saying, their family can do so much for
right.
somebody else. So, um, if it's something that as a listener, you're listening and you're like, gosh, I'm interested, but I will ask you, it's interesting listening to you. What does it take for someone to understand if they could donate to you? Like, is it a very lengthy process or is it just a like couple of tests, or how would somebody know that they could help you personally?
For starters, you would reach out to the living donor clinic at U of M. And they take a survey of your health, things that might be wrong, your demographic. And then from there, they determine whether or not they would move forward with seeing if you should test to be a match. If they determine that, then it's just a matter of initially just having blood work done just to look at those different markers. Maybe there is something wrong and you don't know that, for instance, me, I was an end-stage renal failure and I didn't know it. So they look at that. And then there's a series of tests that happen after that once they deem maybe they would be a good match. Let's test and see. So there's a couple of different medical tests that they go through. For instance, there's a session where you come in and they give you a lot of water, and every 15 minutes they ask you to produce urine, and then they fill you up with more water. That's to test the strength of your kidneys to see how they're functioning. They sometimes match you up with a psychiatrist just to kind of go through to make sure you're in the right frame of mind and understand what it means to donate your organs. If you go through all those tests and they deem you a match, then they move forward and they let me know that they have a candidate who's tested positive as a match, and then the workup for surgery begins. If they are not a match, then they present to them the options of what I mentioned earlier, pair donation and what that entails. Once they agree to be a donor, they match you with a mentor, somebody who's a living donor who has donated a kidney, and they match you up and you can have discussions with that person and talk to them about your fears, what life is like after, what life is like for the person they donated to. So they do a really good job of just making sure physically and mentally that the person who's agreed to donate is supported in the ways that they need to be supported.
Well, thank you for that education because it just really makes you think. And I don't think a lot of us know all of those details. And then it's very interesting to hear you say that just because you're a family member doesn't necessarily mean you could give your other family member the kidney. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, for me, unfortunately, a sibling probably would be a match, but I'm an only child. Typically, they say a sibling would be your best bet.
Okay.
But for instance, my aunt, my cousin, her cousin was a match. Unfortunately for me, my cousins that have tested were not matches. But there are people out there who strangers end up being a match for them. So, and that's not to say that somebody who's a family member should be discouraged from being tested, because
Right.
one family member could not be a match and another family member could be a match. Never hesitate if you find that like someone's family member wasn't a match and you think, well, then that means I wouldn't be a match. That's
Right.
definitely not the case.
Okay. Like I said, thank you for the education because I'm certain there's a lot of people that don't fully understand all that is part of this
Yeah.
process. Well, I just the spirituality question is answered, obviously. And I love your outlook and your decision to turn toward God and to understand that there is a purpose and a reason that you're still here and you're sharing your story. I used to say, I don't like the phrase everything happens for a reason. I don't fully know why you were dealt this hand. I don't fully know why you had to go through all of that and you're still going through it. But I do know that behind everything, there's a path. There's this purpose. The reason you're here, the reason you saw my podcast Facebook post, the reason you said, I want to
Yeah.
share this story. I just believe all of that is divine intervention. I just don't see any other way. So I love that you see it that way too.
Mhm.
And I'm sure your friends and family, thank God you have such a good network,
Yeah.
especially when your partner ended up leaving. Thank God that they were there for you and have helped you, and I'm sure they always tell you how strong you are, and I could say the same thing, but also I just think that you are proof that we as humans, we can handle so much more than we realize, and
Yeah.
when we're given something like this, we have 2 choices. One, we can wallow and we can have anger and we can lock ourselves in our bedroom, or we can do what you're doing, and so yes, you are strong, and yes, that strength is shining through, and I'm beyond proud of you for
Thank you.
continuing every day and also recognizing how important life is. I just think that message is amazing, and it's unbelievable that you are able to have that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. If there's anybody that's in my situation, I would just encourage you to just not lose hope. Um, it's easy to give in, to the negativity. It's
Mhm.
easy to give in and like I said, wallow and, be angry.
Mhm.
But just stay hopeful. Growing up, my grandmother always used to say to me, if you have a voice, be a voice for those who don't have one. And so, if I can bring awareness to and create awareness surrounding organ donation and give hope to people that are waiting for transplant, I want to do that. And so, I just want to remain positive and not to say be an inspiration, but
Well,
just
you
being an
are.
example
Yeah,
and,
you are.
just encourage people just to not lose hope and to just be thankful, for every morning you wake up and open your eyes and breathe in life and just be thankful for that.
You are an inspiration, hands down, and you can say that. So, um, wow, I think that's wonderful perspective. I think that's such a good message, and you're even helping me, think about my son, think about our situation, and I'm sure not every single day is filled with butterflies and
Right.
rainbows.
So, I mean, everybody has days that
Exactly.
don't feel
Right.
like the greatest, but,
Yes.
every day is a new day. So,
It is.
you
Yes,
know
I love that so much. Are you able to do any kind of work or anything, or are you
well,
not?
what I didn't mention in this whole thing is that I was also laid off from my job. And so just
Mm.
when I was starting my job search again, I took some time off just to kind of reflect on that, and just pay attention to my health and enjoy family. Then the whole calciphylaxis and having to transfer over to hemodialysis
Right.
came into play. And so I'm just trying to figure out how I navigate that all while trying to find new employment because I feel good. I'm of sound mind. Physically, I feel great. So I feel like there is no reason why I shouldn't be working, and plus it just keeps your mind busy. So I'm trying to navigate all of that and how that fits into a job search. But yes, I would be able to be able to work, but
I'll keep my eyes and ears open. I think I'm gonna go along with what you said, that this year, 2025 is Melanie's year, so
yeah,
it almost sounds like, okay, it was also very horrible to lose your job, but it made way for you to say what you just said. It made
yeah,
way for you to make time for friends and family and focus on what's the most important, and that's
right,
your health. You can't
yeah,
do anything if you're not focused and taking care of your own self.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow. And you are living is somebody living with you? Are you able to be taken care of, or are you doing everything on your
I
own,
do everything
superwoman?
I'm doing everything on my own. I live with my
Wow.
dog.
Okay, you have your dog. That's good. It's amazing what dogs do for us and our mental, state.
Well, you wanna know what's crazy is that when I was going through all of this summer, she dislocated her hip and had
Oh,
hip surgery
goodness.
while I was in the hospital. Thank God for my dad. My dad took her to her surgery, and he
Okay.
helped in her rehabilitation. She stayed with my parents this summer, and I stayed with them for a little bit as well, after my diagnosis and just getting used to traditional dialysis. She dislocated her hip running with the dog next door, who's only a year old. And so, with him still next door, it was really important for her to rehab without being distracted by him. So, she stayed with my parents, and she had a great recovery. And
Okay,
I'm
good.
so thankful for that.
Thank God, I know.
Yeah.
Good, good, good. Oh, wow.
'Cause she has been my angel through all of this. She really is. I mean,
Good.
pets, we don't deserve them. I mean,
I
the
agree.
unconditional love that I get from her.
What they give us back. You're
Yes,
right.
yes, for sure. I would not have been I know this seems silly to say, but, I don't have children. I would not be able to have navigated through all of this without the love of my dog.
No,
Um,
I'm with you. I was talking to someone this weekend, another friend who doesn't have children either, but she has 2 dogs. I'm like, "Don't feel bad for calling them out as like your children because they are." I'm sorry. I have 2 kids and a dog, and she's their sibling, and,
yeah,
so
yes.
I get it for sure.
I say we're
Wow.
team Mama and Mazer. Her name's Mazer.
Ah.
We've been through a lot. She's had to
Yes, you
adjust to a
have.
lot as well, and she's been a great companion through it all. So I hate that she's getting older. She just
I
turned
know.
11, but
That's the hard part.
she's still a puppy at heart. It was really hard to to keep her down during her recovery because
Mhm.
she's such a puppy at heart.
Mhm.
But she's done wonders for me. So
Good.
thank God for her.
Good. Wow. Well, like I said, we've remained in contact, thank goodness for social media. But I did not know. I knew a little bit. I think I had heard or saw that you were going through a divorce, but I did not know all the details of this health journey. So I can't thank you enough for being open to sharing this very traumatic story. I think so many people can learn from your perspective, your outlook on life, the way that you wake up each day and recognize that the day's a gift. That's a lesson for me. I want my boys to both listen to this podcast because it's such a good message. But just again, finding that I needed some guests, I wanted to highlight some people and just being open to sharing. Thank you so much for doing that. I think we probably could keep talking because I'm sure you have many other examples of times that you've had to pivot. But I will, I will let you get on with your day, but I'm so very grateful. You do look wonderful,
Thank you.
and I love your beautiful smile. As you're telling this entire story, I got emotional, you were a little emotional, but you continued to smile, and I think you're a light, and it was
Thank you.
wonderful to have you on here for sure.
Well, thanks for having me. And I
Of
appreciate the fact
course.
that you opened up this forum to people just to, share their stories of how they've had to pivot and that I
Yes.
have. So
Yes, you have, and I'm sure you're gonna keep pivoting,
for
but
sure.
I'm sure I speak for my listeners when I say that we all will have you in our thoughts and prayers, and hoping that you get through this list and you're able to get the donor that matches you sooner than later. I'm very glad that you are also working in another state so that you've got a couple of different paths.
Yeah,
So please continue to keep us posted on that. But
will do.
also, I love 2025 is your year. So here's to that.
Thank you.
And one day at a time. That's the message that my husband was saying a couple of episodes ago. So I continue to say that one day at a time.
Yeah,
And here's to this being your year.
thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Of course. And thank you for being on. And I'm so grateful that our listeners are going to hear this story.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for the Show Me the Way podcast. We truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. We hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who could use a little motivation. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.